Salvete omnes! In this lesson, we will learn the dative case and the verb possum. Before watching this video, please read pages 46 through 52 in your textbook. This video will cover the following topics: dative case usage, first and second declension dative case endings, conjugating possum in the present, future, and perfect active indicative, and complementary infinitives. The word dative comes from the Latin verb do, dare, dedi, datum, give. The dative case earned its name from its primary use, which is to express indirect objects. Anytime you have a verb that expresses giving, you can expect a dative indirect object. Take this English example. Ashley gave her students feedback. Our subject is Ashley and our verb is gave. What did Ashley give? Feedback, which is our direct object. It is directly receiving the action. To whom did Ashley give feedback? Her students, which is our indirect object. They indirectly receive the action. Sometimes it helps to add the words to or for when translating nouns in the dative case, as in Ashley gave feedback to her students. Here are our dative case endings for the first and second declensions using bonus. Feminine singular, boni. Feminine plural, bonis. Masculine and neuter singular, bono. Masculine and neuter plural, bonis. What patterns do you notice? The dative plural in both declensions and all three genders is is. You probably also notice that the feminine singular dative ending is I, which is also the ending for the nominative plural and genitive singular. Context will be your best friend when trying to figure out what case a noun or adjective ending in I could be. Ask yourself, is the verb singular or plural? Does the verb express giving? Are there any other nominatives, genitives, or datives in the sentence? Questions like these will help you determine what cases are being used and how to best translate the sentence. Let's do a few practice sentences. Marcus pecuniam puellae dedit. Marcus gave money to the girl. Marcus gave the girl money. Both are correct. How do we know that puellae is our dative indirect object? Well, as always, when there is any confusion, let's go to our main verb, dedit. Dedit tells us two things. First, that it is third person singular, so the nominative subject also has to be singular. It is also a verb of giving, which means that we can expect a dative indirect object. If it was not clear to you at that point, which is okay, try translating puellae as a genitive. Marcus gave the girls money, or Marcus gave the money of the girl. Technically, these are grammatically correct, but don't they sound pretty weird? This is a very unscientific heuristic, but trying out different translation options and going with whatever sounds most correct often yields great results. Let's try another one. Amico bono epistulam scriptam dabimus. We will give the written letter to a good friend. Or, we will give a good friend the written letter. Both are correct. Remember that it is up to you to choose how to incorporate definite and indefinite articles, the, a, and an. One more note about the dative case before we move on to possum. Although most often nouns in the dative case are direct objects, there are other specialized but common uses of the dative case, despite Dickey's reticence to teach them. I will only teach you one extra use in this video lesson, the dative of possession. Remember that typically, to express possession, we use the genitive case in Latin, or, in the case of personal pronouns, the adjectives meus, tuus, and suis. There is an exception to this rule. When you want to express possession, but your main verb is a form of sum esse fui futurus, you use the dative case. So, if you wanted to say, the words of the poets are good, in Latin, you would say verba poetis bona sunt, rather than verba poetarum bona sunt. This is why we say mihi nomen est for my name is, rather than nomen meum est. As I said before, although there are many specialized uses of the dative case, if you add the English words to or for when translating a dative noun, you will probably get the sense of the sentence just fine. Let's now switch gears to verbs. Another incredibly important irregular verb in Latin is possum, posse, potui. It means to be able, and comes from the compound of the adjective potus, which means capable or possible, and sum. Some verbs don't have a fourth principal part, and possum is one of them. Let's take a look at possum conjugated in the present, future, and perfect active indicative. Possum, potes, potest, possumus, potestis, possunt. Potero, poteris, poterit, poterimus, poteritis, poterunt. Potui, potuisti, potuit, potuimus, potuistis, potuerunt. Just like sum, possum is perfectly regular in the perfect active indicative. What other patterns do you notice? Remember how I said that sum is one of the most important verbs you will ever learn in Latin? Because possum is a compound form of sum, the present and future active indicative conjugations of possum all contain forms of sum with pot or pos added. If you think about it that way and have already done most of the work memorizing forms of sum, memorizing these forms of possum shouldn't be too onerous. Perhaps you are thinking to yourself, I am able or I have been able don't seem like fully complete sentences. You might expect something to complete the verbal idea. I am able to do what? I have been able to do what? Some verbs, while they technically might be able to stand alone intransitively, they often beg to be semantically completed or fleshed out with another verb. In these cases, Latin uses what is called a complementary infinitive. So, I am able to run would be possum currere. They will be able to conquer would be poterunt vincere. Let's try to put all this together, datives, possum, and complementary infinitives, in one more practice sentence. This time we will start in English and work through translating the sentence into Latin. You singular have been able to give advice to farmers. In this sentence, you have been able tells us that our verb is possum, to be able, and that it needs to be second person singular perfect active indicative. What is the second person singular perfect active indicative form of possum? Remember that possum is regular in the perfect system and that its third principal part is potui. The correct form is potuisti. Excellent. Next up in the sentence, to give. Syntactically, what is to give doing in this sentence? It is completing the verbal idea, you have been able, so it is a complementary infinitive. Our verb for giving in Latin is do, and its second principal part, the present active infinitive, is dare, so that will be our complementary infinitive. So far, we have potuisti dare. Let's keep moving from left to right. What syntactic function is advice serving in this sentence? It is the direct object of to give. Just like main finite verbs, complementary infinitives can take direct objects, indirect objects, and other subordinate constructions. This doesn't change the cases and functions you have already learned. So, if advice is the direct object, what case should it be? Accusative. Good. Our word for advice is consilium, which is neuter second declension. So the proper form is consilium. Now our sentence looks like this. Potuisti dare consilium. Last up, two farmers. What syntactic function is two farmers serving in this sentence? It is the indirect object of to give and needs to be in the dative case in Latin. In general, if you see a form of do, dare, you should expect a dative indirect object. Anyway, the proper vocabulary item for farmer is agricola, and here it needs to be dative plural. What is the correct form? Agricolis. Excellent. Now let's put this sentence all together. Potuisti dare consilium agricolis. This would be a totally correct and acceptable answer if given this item on a quiz or exam. If you want to take it a step further and rearrange the words so that we are following traditional Latin word order, it might look something like this. Consilium agricolis dare potuisti. In Latin, complementary infinitives often, but not always, immediately precede the verbs they complete. This was a beefy video, but you did it. Don't forget to keep practicing Latin morphology. By now you can see just how important it is to put work into studying those endings. The more effort you put in now, the easier reading will become in the future. Waleta!